right, so today we're going to talk about percent bar graphs. This is the very last thing we're going to talk about for the data unit, okay? So I really like percent bar graphs. My favorite thing about them is the fact that they all equal 100%, so that makes my life a little bit easier. All right, so if you have the notes, that's great. If you're done printing out things because you've used so much ink at home, don't even worry about it. As long as you can complete the ticket out, remember you can come back and watch the video multiple times. All right. So mine's in color. If you printed yours out, it's not. Remember, percent is always out of 100. If you can remember that percent is always out of 100, you'll be on the right track, okay? So you can see we have percent bar graphs that go side to side. We have ones that go up and down. These kind of look like regular old bar graphs, but they're kind of funky because you've got a top half and a bottom half. Notice on this one, the blue is females and the red is males. So in the 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, you've got a different number of males and females, which kind of makes sense because it'd be kind of creepy if every single grade level had the exact percentage of boys and girls. To a teacher, that's a little bit creepy. All right, so let's look at the very first one. The percent bar below shows the percentage of movies in a library collection. Summarize the data summarize this and describe the data solution. So as you can see, we've got blue here, we've got yellow, green, and red. If you're looking at a black and white picture, that first section is always going to be the first one on your key. So if it's not in color, you can still figure out what's going on. So let's look at the solution. All right, so we've got action, comedy, drama, and thrillers. This is how I would break it up. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of guesstimation. And so we're going to say that action is 45%. The biggest mistake that 6th graders make is that they say that comedy is like 75%. Remember, comedy starts at 45 and stops here. So if we go back and look at that colored one, we can say, what I do on mine is I cut this in half and say that that's 50. So I can say 45 to 60 is how much? 45, 55, 60. That's 15. And so I have to do some dissecting on mine before I can figure out what the percentages are. Drama is 5% and thriller is 20%. So I could make a statement that says something like the action is the most popular. If this was on a STAR test question, they might say something like the action or the action section of the library is less than the comedy and the thriller combined, or something like that. So you would want to break it down into segments so that you can give a good estimate on what those would look like. All right, let's look at the next one. This one I think is a little easier to read than the last one. It says the percent bar graph shows the percentage of each homeroom who gets an allowance and who doesn't. Summarize and describe the data. So as you can see, we've got homeroom 120, we've got homeroom 121, and homeroom 122. I can tell by looking at it that homeroom 122, man, they get a lot of allowance. Maybe they do more chores than the other ones. It's hard to say, okay? And that homeroom 120 doesn't get much allowance at all. So if you want to ask a friend to go out to Stripes or something like that, you probably want to ask someone from room 122 because there's a better chance that they've got money, all right? So we've got our analysis here. We've got room 120 has about 25% get allowance, 75 does not get allowance. Room 121, 50% get allowance, 50 don't. And room 122, 70% get allowance and 30 don't get allowance. So the kind of question they might ask is, or this would be one of those really wordy answer choices. You'd have 4 answer choices where, remember, there's usually only a few words of difference, like more or less or combined or something like that. So those kind, if the words are all the same, you always want to box the ones that aren't the same. And so you can tell which way they would go by looking at the statements and noticing which ones are all identical and then analyzing just the words that are different. All right. I clicked on myself. All right, let's look at this one. The percent bar graph shows the percentage of time that Brady spends after school doing things. Summarize the data and describe the data. So we can see he spends 20% of his time on chores. Let's count this one. 10. This is almost 20, so I'm going to say that it's 20 here, and then another 15. So what do you think homework is? 20 plus 15 is about 35. And then practice, whether he's practicing for sports or whether he's practicing for band, it's hard to say. It doesn't say. When I get to that last one, I like to count backwards. So I'll say 20, 40, 5. The biggest thing is I want my totals to add up to 100. Okay? So that one you're going to do on your own and just write any statement that you like. This one says, Mr. Rosia has 120 students in his physical education class. He made a percent bar graph showing the represented activities his students chose for that week. So some of them, 20% of his students chose jogging. 40% of his students chose soccer as their activity. Halfway between 60 and 80 is 70, so 10% of them love tennis. And then we've got 10 and then 20, so 30% of them like softball. So you need to write me a statement talking about that particular graph as well, okay? So it says, what is the percentage of the activities? You write the statements that say what about those activities. So you might notice that tennis and softball are equal to one or the other. So look at that when you're talking about your statements, okay? So the last one, I believe this is the last one. This is Hector surveys the students' grades in his school about his favorite after-school activities. The table shows the results. Now, this is number of students. Do I have any percentages yet? No, but I do know that sports and videos games has to be the same. So if I come and look 10, 20, and halfway is 5, 10, 20, and halfway is 5, I can label things and see, okay? So let's look at that one you're going to do on your own. So you'll want to put percentages down. You may have to do some proportion boxes, okay? It just depends on how you look at things. I noticed that one of them is a really bad choice because it's showing that music is extremely large, but music is not more than 50% of the total number of students. So keep that in mind as you're working through that one. All right, so practice problem 6 says a part of the survey, a group of people were asked to name their preferred method of viewing television shows, and the responses are shown below. So we have these students here. We don't have percentages, but I can look and say 8 and 9, those percentages need to be close together. 3 needs to be pretty small and 5 a little bit bigger. So I know that one of them, letter C, is really bad because look, 25, 25, 25. Are all the values the same? No, so that's a bad one. So when you're working through that one, keep that in mind. Recorded is going to need to be the biggest. Agreed? If you need to do proportion boxes and do percentage is over of percent over 100, do so. Okay? So notice that's what Miss Bridges did. She did the number of students, 25 total students, and did all of the proportion boxes so that she could decide which one it was. Okay? All right, I hope y'all have a great week. This is this is the very last video for our data unit, and y'all have a great day.